I appreciate everybody joining into this panel today and our panelists for this very important discussion. You know, there's been a lot of discussion about energy consumption and environmental sustainability of blockchain, specifically Bitcoin, especially over the last few months. And I think this is a very important discussion to really kickstart the understanding of how scaling really affects sustainability. Zach, you know, you've got a very interesting background with Unbounded Capital. Could you just share with us kind of your role there and your role in the energy discussion?
Sure. Well, I'm the co-founder and managing partner of Unbounded Capital, and we invest into the Bitcoin SV ecosystem. And definitely the topic of is Bitcoin eco-friendly has been one that our existing investors and prospective investors have been asking us a lot lately.
Oh, great. So, interestingly enough, this discussion was kicked off by Elon Musk. At least revisited by Elon Musk recently.
Yeah.
So, you know, what did he get right and what did he get wrong about, you know, what he said?
Well, before Elon, I want to pick up where Steve left off, which is, and what really got the conversation started, at least within the investing community, was Stoneridge's annual shareholder letter they released in January. And there they make some good points, and I think the main thing is that proof of work mining really incentivizes just having the price of energy being as cheap as possible, rather than having the price of energy be as cheap as possible when keeping in mind the distribution of that energy, as the Bitcoin can absorb all of that hash power. So what we're seeing is that as renewable energy becomes more efficient, it's getting foreshadowed within Bitcoin miners, where Bitcoin miners use renewable energy at a much higher rate than any other type of miners today. And we think that's going to continue as a result of them not having to connect to a centralized grid to take advantage of that power. So would definitely recommend people check out the Stoneridge annual letter for kind of the investor perspective and to dive more into that. But you know, Elon really got the conversation started, where we had some conversations then, and then I think almost every investor since Elon got expressed his, I think, legitimate concerns with the environmental costs of BTC Bitcoin. It's just been a big topic of conversation, a topic of learning, and since then we actually even started writing a book on the topic of is Bitcoin an eco-friendly technology, and we're definitely referencing, you know, Elon Musk and Tesla within that book. And you know, I think what he got right is that BTC Bitcoin is not efficient, and it does not I think have a good ratio of what it costs to use and the environmental costs relative to its utility. I think what people get wrong though is then that's true for all proof of work blockchains, that's true for all versions of Bitcoin, that's true for crypto in general. As we clearly see something different within, you know, BSV Bitcoin. And specifically, you know, you were using the figure 50,000. It, you know, I guess oscillates where between 10,000 and 100,000 times as cheap, as efficient as BTC Bitcoin, depending on the time of day today. But it's more comparable to Visa. So today, from our preliminary analysis and working on this book, we're seeing that it's about half a cent to process a transaction on the Visa network, and it's slightly more than half a cent on BSV, where that I think is truly remarkable, as this is kind of the beginning of Bitcoin, where Visa has already achieved like an incredible amount of efficiency as best you can within that type of transaction processing network. So I think we're excited to see kind of the proliferation of Bitcoin becoming more and more efficient. And so in that sense, you know, Elon, I think, was right in his looking at BTC Bitcoin the way that he is, but I think I would encourage him, instead of trying to get the Dogecoin development community to raise the block size by 10x, he should look at the, you know, most efficient and scaled blockchain today.
Interesting. So, you know, what during this ESG or environmental sustainability and governance discussion, what do you think is the biggest misconception about it?
Well, there's a lot of big misconceptions, so it's hard to give one. But I, off the top of my head, I'd say we're seeing that, you know, BTC is synonymous with Bitcoin, which I think everyone watching this here knows isn't the case, but is still definitely, I'd say, a major misconception within the kind of the broader investment world, as well as the fact that proof of work mining is inherently inefficient. I mean, this is kind of the misunderstanding that is the basis for a lot of the crypto and blockchain world that we see today. Why people think that we need to do things like proof of stake because, say, BTC or Ethereum are inefficient, and those are kind of the two networks that are synonymous within the broader community with proof of work, but really, proof of work without a limit on scale is actually wildly efficient and perhaps one of the most efficient technologies ever created in history.
And it's interesting that you bring up the efficiencies, because when you really start to look at, Visa, as you mentioned, that's just one company of a financial payment system. But when you really say, that BSV in the future could potentially compete with Visa, right, as even with a carbon footprint per transaction, when you really think about the whole ecosystem of that's just one small company in the payment system. So if we're saying that BSV could compete with just Visa, then obviously there's a lot of room there for improvement as far as a global payment system. And when you start tying in some of the other benefits of, say, BSV into what could happen to an enterprise, you start to see that there are these other variables that, Steve and yourself have kind of brought up as far as, there's the cybersecurity aspect, there's the legacy hardware aspect, there's, all of these little additional cost to process these transactions, where on blockchain, obviously, you can mitigate some of those cybersecurity concerns and mitigate some of those costs, legacy costs. Going back to that is, how much more efficiency does that provide for any type of company, and how would they kind of look at, the power consumption that they're using now versus how they could utilize BSV to lower that power consumption?
Well, I think Steve said it best at the beginning, which is you can't just look at the power consumption in isolation. You have to look at what is the utility, what is this thing providing, and then how much power does that cost, and looking kind of at the net metric, not just on how much power, which I don't think is a really, which I think is a pretty horrible metric for analyzing this. So, yeah, I think payments is an easy to understand example, and while BSV is certainly not taking any of Visa's major customers today, it is competitive. You're looking at basically a very similar per transaction cost for Visa and Bitcoin SV. So I think what we just need to see is more value-add services on top of Bitcoin, because really what Visa does very well is not just processing transactions very efficiently. It's having a whole end-to-end solution for processing payments. And I'm excited to see kind of what the entrepreneurs are doing in the space today to make Bitcoin more competitive with Visa directly. But you're right, that really is just a small, I think, drop in the bucket in terms of what Bitcoin's potential is. And there's many ways to kind of unlock the efficiency of Bitcoin. In addition to payments, I think something we're really excited about is whenever data needs to be read and accessed by many different companies or many different people, especially across the world. I think that's a great example of where using Bitcoin today provides significant efficiency compared to some of the non-blockchain solutions that exist today. And yeah, efficiency is really synonymous with its environmental cost, as there's a very strong correlation between the environmental cost of something and the efficiency. If that's too out of whack, then entrepreneurs will come in and take advantage of that opportunity.
Absolutely. Fascinating. I appreciate your input on that. So I'd like to ask each of you the same question here is, as ESG is obviously a very hot topic, would you say that, and across every industry and vertical, would you say that Bitcoin is better suited to, deal with the ESG problem and environmental sustainability?
Yeah, I mean, the title of our webinar on this topic was, is Bitcoin one of the most eco-friendly technologies? And we argued yes there. We're going to expand on this argument in our book upcoming, but I think there's a meaningful chance that when we look back 20, 30 years in the future back to now, or over the next 5 to 10 years. And I think there's a very good chance that Bitcoin adoption is synonymous with our transition from fossil fuels to renewable energy, and potentially the largest driver of that revolution.
Yeah, well, that's great. I really think that this is the beginning of this discussion, and over the course of the rest of this year, I think it'll continue to be a topic that is explored on various avenues, whether the technical avenue or the investment avenue or the scientific avenue or even the processor avenue. And I appreciate all your guys' time today, and thank you very much for joining us remotely and here in studio.